How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we are going to be talking about old school versus new school corrections. We're just going to cover three differences. Me and Russ will be on as well, know that there are many more, but we briefly want to just go over three so you guys get a quick little show, and then you guys can enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Now, guys, if you haven't, let me just go over my sponsors to make you aware. First sponsor I have is American Military University. If you guys are looking for a degree, looking to seek higher education, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, also very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. So again, if you're looking for a degree and seeking that higher education to bring experience into the classroom, please check out American Military University. We also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. This book does very well, used for training all across the country, even outside of the country. So if you guys get a chance, check out this book. It's available on Amazon. And we also have How to Succeed in Corrections. This book is also doing very well, published by Blue 360 Media. If you want to get this book is also out and available, and it's through Blue 360 Media. The link to that is in the description. Guys, I would get my hands on this book. I also have another book coming out shortly, published by the same company, Blue 360 Media, and that's going to have about another 42 more lessons that I feel will connect very well to this book and this book. I'm telling you guys, when you start putting these books together, there's a lot of good information here that is definitely coming from those with experience. All right, let me get in Russ. What's up, Russ?
Anthony, how are you doing this morning, sir?
Good, brother. Do you mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
Not at all. My name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Started way back in the 80s at San Quentin, and then eventually promoted to another CDCR facility in Northern California. After that, I retired and I went to work for a local juvenile detention facility. I got out of that work, and now I work for a private company where we do rehabilitation and reentry work for a local probation department and a local county jail where I am a case manager.
And Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos going on Facebook?
Keepers is doing great. Keepers of Chaos, we did that, or I did that, founded that, in order to really be a voice for the people out there who wanted to look at the professional side of what we do in corrections and to be a beacon for, training and learning and knowledge and mentorship and all of those things. We wanted to, stand out and be apart from just some site that wanted to be, bitch about this or post memes about that, and really focus on the professional side of things.
Yes. Now, guys, before we start our topic, I just want to say, just as an update, we didn't want to do a whole show on it, but there is an update. The inmate who stabbed Derek Chauvin 22 times is being charged with attempted murder. Derek Chauvin was stabbed in prison 22 times by a former gang leader and one-time FBI informant who told investigators he targeted the ex-Minneapolis police officer because of his notoriety for killing George Floyd. John Turskak was charged with attempted murder a week after the November 24th attack at the Federal Correctional Institution in Tucson, Arizona, or Tucson, Arizona, as Russ would say. He told correctional officers he would have killed Chauvin had they not responded so quickly, prosecutors said. So again, we kind of touched on this. He was connecting to the person's notoriety. And then Turskak, who was serving a 30-year sentence for crimes committed while a member of the Mexican Mafia prison gang, told investigators he thought about attacking Chauvin for a month because he's a high-profile inmate, but denied wanting to kill him. Turskak is accused of attacking Chauvin with an improvised knife in the prison law library around 12:30 p.m. on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Correctional officers used pepper spray and subdued Turskak, prosecutors said. The Bureau of Prisons said the employees performed life-saving measures, and Chauvin was taken to a hospital for treatment. This is the part that's interesting. And something that me and Russ connect right off the bat. Turskak told FBI agents interviewing him that after the assault that he attacked Chauvin on Black Friday as a symbolic connection to the Black Lives Matter movement, which garnered widespread support in the wake of Floyd's murder in 2020, and the black hand symbol associated with the Mexican mafia, which basically, when you get that black hand on you, it's time to go to work. You got the Black Friday, you got the Black Lives Matter. I mean, Russ, when it comes to gangs and symbols and the importance of connecting all this, I mean, that makes sense to you, correct?
Yeah, parts of it make sense. Parts of it, in just what this guy was doing, being an FBI informant, and some of the things that we saw on him, with regards to the Mexican mafia, who has never had any alliances with, any of those black gangs, and that sort of thing. In fact, they're all enemies and stuff. I think it sounds to me like he's trying to throw people off the scent. Those that have, were on Keepers of Chaos, got to see. I actually, a friend of mine gave me some information, and we knew about that and broke that news, many days ago, that it was a former, MA member that had done that. I think this is a kind of a failure by BOP, in that they, what are you doing putting an ex-cop, high notoriety in with gangbangers from Mexican mafia? They, just because they're dropouts doesn't mean that they lose that gang mentality. And we've seen that, here in California many times. Is they, just because they drop out of the Mexican mafia doesn't mean that they still don't have that mentality. So
Yeah.
anyway.
And you got you got somebody obviously that literally wanted to connect to the notoriety of Chauvin, which is funny because usually gangs like this, high organized gangs like the Mexican mafia, they have people to carry out their work. It's never really their members. So like if I I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because obviously it does, but for something random like this, if this was someone that was, let's say, still active, and he probably did this for the Mexican mafia, or did this while a Mexican mafia member, I could picture the Mexican mafia like being pissed off for putting all that attention back on them and probably taking him out. I mean, would you agree, Russ? I mean, you dealt with them.
Yeah, that would definitely be the case. In this case, he's already pissed him off. He's, blood in, blood out, just from the fact that, he's already, probably, I won't say for sure, because obviously I don't know, but he's a dropout, so he's definitely on the hard candy list. And then and then second,
what does that
all,
mean? Hey, wait, what is that? I never heard that before. What does that mean, hard candy list?
Yeah. So there's lists that go around, and guys that are, and all of these lists make it to, all of the pintas and jails and everything else. And so the guys on the hard candy list, they've done something where they're not in good graces, and especially the ones that are dropouts, they can never come back. I've seen people say, "Oh, well, he wants to get back in good with the Mexican mafia." That's not the way it works. This guy, testified in court as an FBI informant. There's no coming back from that. There's no coming back from dropout, period. So the hard candy list was just a way of, it's kind of a nod way back to the day, and we're going to talk about that today. Old school versus new, versus new school. It's just a nod to back on Christmas. It used to be a big thing that all of the inmates would get a big package full of, hard candy. And
it's right in there too. In prison slang, it says it right here, Russ. You're spot on. In prison slang, hard candy is a gang or an individual who committed a serious violation of unwritten jailhouse rules, such as snitching on someone. Woo, Russ.
Yep. And so that hard candy list, and you actually see they actually put that on there. It's not just slang. It's an actual thing. And it'll tell you, who's in for a round of discipline, and who's in for a round of stabbing, and who's in for a round of, being killed on sight. So, that's going back a little ways. Also, there's a Dolly Parton song. So
anyway. Oh, is it Hard Candy?
Yeah, Hard Candy Christmas. Yeah.
So. All right. Well, that was good. You brought it back to some old school terminology. So, Obviously, we do a lot of discussions, a lot of topics here, and sometimes when we get in a really deep dialogue, especially when it comes to politics and stuff, a lot of people always say, we got to bring it back to old school, the way it was in old school, and I don't know if people have the same meaning when it comes to old school. What got me recently was something that you told me, Russ, that really motivated me in wanting to do this topic. Was I know a lot of people, when they think old school, they think that we're roughhousing the inmates, which Russ was quickly to say, even when he entered the profession in 1989, a lot of people thought that the system was going soft, and we weren't in positions of roughhousing inmates, which is not something we condone, guys. I want to put that out there first. Not that we condone it, but we're trying to paint a picture of where we were to where we are now. So obviously a lot of the movement in the 1960s did affect the rights of inmates as well. And I believe that's when the shift really started to occur, somewhere in the 60s. But Russ, you said when you entered back in 1989, people were still saying the complaints that we are too soft. So saying that we're too soft is not something that happened in the last couple of years. I mean, you're going back a few years, and you're saying you've heard that when you started the profession in 1989.
Yeah, when we look at these things, the same complaints come down through the years. And so what we see is people will say, "Oh, we're too soft. We're not hands-on enough." And I would just really question what exactly does that mean? I think one of the things that that we've kind of failed in is making sure that we understand what our exact function is, and our exact function starts with what our oath is, and our oath is to the Constitution in general and the Constitution of your state, if you're if you're working at anything below the federal level. And so really picking apart the difference between old school and new school, there are things that have happened over the years. It used to be back before even I started, where inmates were largely civilly dead. There wasn't a lot of avenues for them to redress things. I think that was probably not constitutional. But I am in no way trying to come off as a softie. But I think that we do have to protect inmates, and we do have to protect their rights, whether we like them or not, because we have to have a standard to follow. If every different institution and jail and prison out there is just going on, what they think good treatment or bad treatment is, or if they want to institute the good old green wall or whatever it is, I think that it does us a disservice, because I don't think then that we can be effective, and we see that in some prison systems right now that are under fire for some of their treatment of inmates. So I think that some people think that, oh, the back in the good old days, prison house justice. Well, no, that's not good either, because there's no safety net for that. It's just people doing whatever they want. So I don't think that was really ever instituted, on a large scale anyway. So I think people are just kind of, they pass the same gripes and complaints all the way down. And I think we have to look at, where we really are. I think we have to understand that we were always at a point, and we should always be at a point where we need to evolve, and we need to, bring up the professionality of the workplace, and we have to do the best that we can to be what it means to be a great, experienced correctional officer, correctional sergeant, correctional lieutenant, anyone at the correctional level that deals with inmates. So I hope that made sense. I hope I didn't ramble.
No, it does. And to be honest with you, I came in 2002. I wouldn't want to be in an environment every day that was ultra aggressive like that anyway. I think when I look to compare old school and new school, I may utilize a more hands-on approach versus a more, being afraid to put their hands on. But that doesn't mean I'm saying hands-on in an aggressive fashion. It's more of an assertive fashion. Again, I only know the system for the last 21 years. I wasn't there, obviously, in the 60s or before that. But I do know we were more assertive, and we weren't afraid to be more assertive. But as we get further into what our dialogue is, I think, unfortunately, people are blending assertive and aggressive and trying to say that they're the same thing, and we're losing out on a very strong component of our control, which is our assertiveness. And would you agree with that, Russ? I mean, do you believe in managing the inmates that there's a difference between being aggressive, which is not what we want to be, believe it or not, and being assertive, which is really where the balance is in maintaining control in corrections?
Yeah, I fall back a lot of times where I talk on what it means to be the type of officer who's that one trick pony, that their only answer to everything is that hammer, and to be aggressive or super aggressive. There is a time and place in this job, no doubt about it, to be really, really aggressive. But that's not the nature of the way it is every day, all the time, in every circumstance. There's a time and place to implement that. There's a time and place to be assertive, and to make sure that we have those good communication skills, and that we're able to de-escalate things, if it's appropriate, and if it's necessary, and if it's doable under the right circumstances, which I think a lot of people get that confused as well. But I think the main thing is that we have to understand that we have to have a whole bunch of different tools at our disposal that we can use. And that one size fits all aggressiveness doesn't actually work very well inside prison, except at the right times where it's called for. So I think people really need to learn this job and understand that it's a lot more complex and nuanced than some people think it is.
Yeah, and I think that mixture of people not understanding the difference matters. I'm reading something now on what is assertiveness, what is aggressiveness, and unfortunately, how many people interchange the terms. And I have a feeling sometimes we may do that too in corrections, thinking that they're telling us to put hands off, and that means we can't do that. It's like, guys, hold on, because they're not saying that you can't be assertive when needed. They're just asking yourself, hey, even if when you have to cross into being aggressive, you really got to define that and it's and justify it. So assertiveness is a helpful way of communicating, that is clear, direct, constructive, and respectful. It's built on the understanding that your own needs and another's needs are both important to consider, and that both deserve to be respected. And that's pretty much how I always right. I have it in my books too. You lead by expectation. I mean, yeah, if I have to enforce the rules, don't get me wrong, I will. But I'm going to try through expectation first to really balance that respect. Because at the end of the day, believe it or not, a lot of our interactions really are to try to help these inmates move to where they got to be. And sometimes, they're not that easily moved. So you got to kind of, be a little assertive in your direction, but never in a way that's disrespectful, because again, that's not going to be met in a welcoming fashion. Then you have aggressiveness, which is aggressiveness, on the other hand, is a way of communicating where you try to control the behavior of others. You put your own needs first without any consideration for the other person's need. Now, I'm going to disregard that last part, without any consideration for the other person's need, because I know, in fact, in corrections, that's the balance. I mean, we could have an issue where there's an inmate that's really coming after us, and yes, we will fight for our survival. But once it's been made clear that we're safe at this point, our focus, besides staff, also goes onto that inmate as well, to make sure we get them to where they got to go. But like Russ said, 100% aggressiveness could be utilized when needed, but it's not how you want to, how you want to go in carrying out your day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it says, this is the benefits of assertiveness. I thought this was cool. And I could see how this could play out a little bit. Strengthen relationships by showing respect for self and others. I think there are inmates that respect an assertive officer, because they know at this point the officer is strong enough to, kind of stay focused on what needs to be done. It reduces the power struggle. So therefore, I'm not going back and forth with, let's say Russ is the inmate. I'm not going back and forth. At one point, I am going to say, hey, listen, you're done? Now, this is what we're going to do. I heard you. Now you're going to hear me. and it's not meant to be disrespectful. It's meant for me to get this person from A to B. Resolve conflict in an effective way. Build confidence in expressing needs, wants, and feelings and making requests. Build self-esteem and reduces feelings of anxiety, resentment, and helplessness. And I do agree with that, because when you tend to be assertive, you tend to gain control. So when you have control, you're not having control with the sense of anxiety, with the sense of resentment or of being helplessness. No, you have control because you know that you can solve whatever the problem is. Hey, Russ, before we go into it, do you have anything you want to say about that, the benefits of assertiveness?
Yeah, I'll just say that the way to look at this is when you're dealing with an individual, is that if you can make that interaction take on an aura of I win, you win, it's going to be much better, because then what you end up with is a level of understanding and respect back and forth. Now, sometimes that devolves into the aggressive side rather than that assertive side. And then it becomes about I win, you lose. And so if you can think about it in those terms, it makes it much more concrete in your mind about what it is that you're trying to establish with any given individual. If you have that to hang your hat on, when I'm having this interaction, how can I make it so that we both win here? And that's going to change your phraseology. It's going to change your tone, but it's not going to decrease your assertiveness. It's just going to put you on the right level to accomplish what you're trying to get from that individual.
Yeah, and I love what you just said too, because I know people may challenge the fact that you said an inmate is going to win. Yeah, at the end of the day, we're trying to accomplish something to get them to where they got to be. It's under our control, but it is supposed to be a win-win. It is really supposed to be a win-win. I think that's another thing right now, is that when you work on the assertive side, I love that you brought that up, Russ. This could be a whole topic in itself, and I think maybe we will devote a topic on the difference between being assertive and aggressive with inmates. I think we crossed into something that was never really discussed before, but it's good to take ownership of it here, and then maybe next week build on the topic a little bit more. But when it comes to that win loss mentality, it puts us in a position of conflict right off the bat, because one side's not going to want to give up. But if you can make it clear that, hey, we're only doing this so I can get you here, and then try to translate how the inmate would win in the long term, because that's usually what we're trying to do. Is you got people that are very immediate and impulsive, and you're trying to present a long-term plan where you may not see it now, but you'll see it later. You got to be able to translate the win in the long term. I honestly think this is definitely something, Russ, that we could have a whole nother dialogue. Maybe we'll even do it more sooner than later. So me and Russ came up with 3 things. It's not an all-inclusive list. It's not, but it's just something to get the dialogue going. That's what we're here for. But the first thing I said, and I'll go first with this one, was I think the inmates are more entitled now. I think there's some staff coming in that's unfortunately feels a little entitled. What do I mean by entitled? Is that you're coming in with a sense of that you deserve things, that your people owe you things. Right here, a sense of deservingness or being owed a favor when little or nothing has been done to deserve special treatment. You got inmates now that are more confused between needs and wants. For them, wants are just as important as needs, and therefore they will fight with staff when they don't get what they want, and they push as if they need it. And I think that where the entitlement comes in right now, and it's going to cross into the next thing that we're going to discuss, but basically change has really been beneficial towards the inmate population, extremely beneficial. And it doesn't really allow staff to do what they need to do to get the job done. I believe that we could have very balanced changes, but unfortunately, we didn't really go through the experts to create those changes. We went directly to the public and to the inmates, which, to be honest with you, how do you go to the public when they don't really understand what it's like to run prison or to run a jail? That all the changes should have literally been filtered through staff, and then through staff brought out to the public, and even back to the inmate population to see where we agree, where we disagree, and then maybe some explanations in between. But when it comes to the entitlement right now, you have a lot of inmates that believe that their voice right now on the outside, and they have right to believe this, has greater value than the people that actually do the job. So when we tend to enforce a rule that we know needs to be done in order to motivate the inmate to go where they got to go, the inmate doesn't just challenge it. They feel justified in their challenge because they feel that there's going to be greater support on their end. And then when you have a sense of entitlement that is high on one end, you got to realize something. It's going to lower the other end. So if I have inmates that believe that they're owed or they deserve when they don't, and their sense of entitlement is here, and it's justified because of the push from the public, whatnot, then staff is going to feel on the opposite end of that. So the automatic reaction is when you have inmates that are entitled or feel entitled, you got to assume that staff is going to start feeling disenfranchised and is going to start not holding individuals accountable because they're here and the inmates are here. And again, whether that's true or not, whether it's a perspective, it's still something that at this point staff do believe. Staff do believe right now the changes have shifted one way, and therefore the inmates have more say. And with that level of entitlement, with that level of justification, also comes very discreetly, but it's definitely evident to staff who work the units, is a position of authority, where staff, as I said, they feel that their position of authority has been weakened. Did I explain that okay, Russ? Did that make sense?
Yeah, and there is a lot of that goes on, on both sides. I see a lot of young staff coming in, and they work 2 or 3 weeks, and then they think, hey, you know what? Now I'm ready for my Saturday, Sunday, and holidays days off, and they haven't paid any of their dues yet, and they don't realize that those dues are deep, and they're payable from the beginning of your career to the end. And then you get some of those officers that, hey, they have put some time in, they're at 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, and they think, okay, this is the end. I don't have to pay dues anymore. And, I need a cushy job up in a tower, and I don't have to think or do any real work or pay any dues or be around inmates. And so there is a sense of entitlement and maybe even justification in not doing certain parts of the job. And then you have the inmates on the other side, of course, and especially the youngsters, who they've grown up in this in this antisocial criminal mindset. And they feel entitled and they feel justified in doing whatever they want, even up and beyond the point of killing someone, just to get what they want at that immediate moment. So it's very dangerous and very filled with conflict. And that's why I want officers to feel empowered, number one, by their position and the law, and by their competence in being able to talk, and then being able to act if necessary, and then being able to justify those actions on paper and explain why you did what you did and why what you did complies with policy, procedure, state law, and case law. And that's one of the reasons why I really did the whole Keepers of Chaos thing, was so that people felt that they weren't being deprived of their authority, as it were. So I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. And I want to mention, in 2017, when we lost Lieutenant Floyd, that's where I started really understanding what entitlement meant, because a lot of the inmates believed it was justified because that went on social media and the public was supporting what happened. At least a small scale of the public, which only motivated the inmates. It made it harder for us to control. So I definitely felt it in 2017. But having said that, obviously, that was also the first time where, I'm sure it could have existed, but that was the first time I really felt aware of it, where I really saw it in action. Next part, more policy driven versus lack of common sense. I would like to start off with this, but I really want Russ to start off. But I just want to start off with one caveat, just to maybe influence a thought for Russ, if you don't mind, Russ, because I would love to get your perspective as you blend in your thought. The reason why I said this is because I think that we work in a system now that we're so afraid of the potential lawsuits that we put up these policies just to be more concerned of liability. And what they don't realize is that they're making the job a lot harder to do, because now it seems to be very bureaucratic, I guess, where you just have this layered upon layered systems of policies and procedures with no high level communication, just being passed down because the liability behind it all. And then people get more confused with, oh, I got to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, when it was like, well, I could have just done this. But I feel like right now, the people that don't do their job, instead of holding them accountable, you wind up holding everybody accountable by slapping out a memo. And eventually what happens here is, through the years, it adds up. And now you got staff that really feel that every step they have to do is micromanaged through policies from people who are just really trying to, protect themselves from a lawsuit. And when you tend to be micromanaged in that fashion, where you do have more memos that are managing the how behind the work, as opposed to us doing it through our experience, well, we feel micromanaged. But the scariest thing about this all is that we're afraid to employ common sense, which really is how corrections really moves forward. Is there's a lot of common sense decision making that may get a bit confusing when you start overwhelming it with layers and layers of paper. What's your thoughts? Does that make sense for us?
Yeah, one of the things that we bump up against is, and I'll never forget this. When I went through the academy, I went through a class called discretionary decision making. And discretionary decision making is basically, hey, you have the authority to make decisions, and within the bounds of the law and policy and procedure, you should be able to render some type of decision in any given place. And what we've done is we've decided to get so heavy-handed with the ink on the paper that we've tried to destroy the discretionary decision-making process. And when we do that is we basically, handcuff staff and make them unable to render any decision but the one that person up there in their ivory tower wants to have happen, because they are all about control and they want to see things in the way that they think things should both unfold, and they want things to be outcome driven. They want only a good outcome in every circumstance. And that's not possible in corrections, right? Trying to have that level of control and believing that you can get to that point, is a fool's errand. So, we've taken that away, and we should be putting back the discretionary decision making. We should be trying to get people who are capable of making those types of decisions, and we should be training people up on how to get to those types of decisions and be really good in the clutch. And instead of doing those things, we're putting ink on paper.
Yeah, I love what you said, Russ, because that is the other aspect. When I said liability, is also people that just want to control every effort. And it could be because, one, they like to have that control because they're more concerned about the tactical as opposed to managing the people and keeping them motivated. Because for me, I'm more motivated when I have more investment in what I'm doing. But then you can get people that, move up based on tactical skill, and they want to micromanage every aspect of what needs to be done. But then you also mentioned just outside, most of the time they do that because they could be afraid, because when you take the highest level of responsibility, you are in charge of your people. And technically you shouldn't be delegating tasks, you should be delegating empowerment. And a lot of these people are so afraid to delegate empowerment because, well, I'm responsible. Yeah, but that's part of the job. Shit, anybody could do the job if you want to keep on delegating tasks and micromanaging it like you wouldn't believe. But you have to be able to trust your people. And then if there's a concern, you got to step up and take the hit. That's just how it is. And also pass off on the success. Most likely the people, like, I want to mention something that Russ, kind of in line with what Russ said, is most likely the people that constantly delegate task and delegate, basically, they're the ones that take care of the how. Technically, they're probably also the ones that want the recognition. Think about that. At the highest level, if I micromanage everything that you're doing, how the hell can I give you the recognition when technically, I'm the one that micromanaged it? No, that's the wrong way of management. It really is. But I feel that we have shifted towards that. I feel that we have shifted towards facilities in which it's just safer to micromanage every step of their way because we're so afraid to trust our people who have been trained to do their job more effectively than you have at the highest of levels. So it's crazy how you could have people that may be able to lead a ship and not have the experience, but think that they do. And I can go ahead and micromanage someone all because I'm in the position, but yet I know nothing of the title of the people that I am overseeing. Because remember, guys, as you move up, you are going to be in charge of departments that you don't have experience in. So you got to give trust and you got to let them do their job. And if they have any concerns, come back to me and I'll see what I can do. I'll be your resource. I'll help facilitate what you need. But I'm not in a position to kind of tell you how to do everything that you got to do because I don't have the expertise to do your job. My job basically is to facilitate those needs within prison operations because that's why you need administration. Administration is supposed to be the objective part that tries to get everything in the house running equally and fairly. But yeah, I think that's definitely something that is a concern we're facing more now than ever is the chance that people are really running these facilities through memos and policies and not allowing for common sense. Back in the day, the policies that I really remember were policies that were really centered on safety and security because those are failures that you don't want to have at any level. And if there was a failure that occurred, then yes, we're going to put that on paper because we don't want shit like that to happen again. And it made sense to us. I would want that on paper. But then it just has a bunch of other stuff that really is, hey, can I just tell this guy to go from A to B? No, I need him to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's a gear, but it's just quicker for them to go to A and B. Let me see. Let me get the next one. This is the tactical side. Russ wanted to share a story with us, so I'm excited to hear this. I haven't heard it yet. So I was going to play some really softcore porn music in the background while Russ shares his story because I know this really gets Russ's blood moving, or pumping. But hey, Russ, you want to take the lead on this one? You said something equipment.
Yeah, I actually I did another video and it's somewhere on Tier Talk. I'm not sure where now. Where I talked about, we talked about, the evolution of the job. And one of the things, when I first came in is our equipment was really, really, limited. We had a few things, we had handcuffs and we had a baton and that was really about it. And what we would see happen out there in the place that I was at San Quentin is not everybody even had radios. We did have some electronic alarm devices and so forth, but largely the way we ran all of our responses was a whistle relay. And so somebody that had a radio, down there in the South Block Rotunda would blow their whistle and people would come from, South Block and that person would, point the way where to go and say where it was, it's the North Block second tier or whatever. And the thundering herd would just, get there and, pretty much destroy everything along the way. Not just kidding, not really destroy, but it was sometimes a sight to behold. When some of these, especially some of the, larger responses were required. And so, eventually though, we went from beyond that to, suddenly, everybody had a radio and, people were able to put out better information and we weren't reliant, on people just blowing whistles necessarily all of the time. But the thundering herd was still getting there and, staff and inmates alike were getting hurt. And so the next big advent for California Department of Corrections was pepper spray. And pepper spray was great because we could pollute a big area and cause people to cough and then, force them to get down and really saw, a difference in probably the number of officers getting hurt, the number of inmates getting hurt. And so, it was a giant leap forward. And then the other day I was talking to a buddy of mine, and they had a situation with a naked inmate who was drawing Picassos all over the walls, if you guys know what that is. And this is the kind of thing where people were going to have to gear up and go in and extract him for his own safety, possibly get hurt, definitely get poop all over themselves. And instead, this was the first time he as an instructor was able to use this. He had a pepper ball gun, and he used a neutral agent, no actual pepper in it. And one shot was able to get the inmate's attention and bring him back to his right mind enough that they were able to pretty much secure him with very little violence. And so as we see things, progress, and the things that we're able to get have just been, a huge change in the way we used to do business with the thundering herd, and just go in there and it was just dog piles. And, we didn't have good response techniques. We didn't have good response policies. We didn't have, the widespread now availability, at least in CDCR, with all this 40 millimeter equipment and Mark 48 pepper spray canister, huge fire extinguisher looking thing, where we can just pollute a huge area and bring things back under control. So that's been a really good spot in corrections, is that I believe that all of that technology / equipment has really cut down on staff injuries, cut down on inmate injuries, and made prisons safer overall. And so I think that is a difference. But yeah, if you guys get a chance, I don't know if that is even still up anymore, but my original, whistle video on there, talking about how we used to use a whistle back when I started, and the way it is now. And everybody's still required to wear a whistle, but it's a bit of an anachronism, from days past, where that was kind of like your final backup plan. If your radio didn't work, if your pad alarm didn't work, if the eye in the sky was looking in the wrong direction, you still had your whistle. And I still have some stories about that, but we'll save those for another day.
Yeah, and obviously you also got to add the implemented body-worn cameras now in corrections, which I find to be actually very beneficial. They negate more false allegations, especially the verbal, which usually were the ones that were always tough to defeat. Now with the body-worn cameras, you have an interaction with an inmate. If it starts to go south, you put that camera on, you highlight your professionalism, and then the inmate can make whatever allegation, but I got the camera, let's pull the footage. And never once did the officer say this, say that, because there are obviously levels of professionalism that's expected. And a lot of the inmates will walk by and say, yeah, I had an interaction with this officer and he told me this, and he's going to kill me, he's going to hurt me. Oh, really? Because the officer was actually recording that whole interaction. And actually, I think it was more you that were saying these things. I remember just 20 years ago. 21 years ago, I started in 2002. We didn't have OC. It wasn't something that was funny that we even knew to push for at that time, because again, we never had it. So sometimes when you never have it, your level of effectiveness is what you feel at the moment. So now that I have OC, or my staff have OC, I couldn't even imagine a world without OC. But with that said, back then we didn't have OC. Basically, it wasn't in our arsenal. Eventually, obviously, we did get it. People did see the need of it. But we also, not everybody had a radio. Now that's different. And usually this really relates to money. But I think when it came for us with the OC, it was the trust of, you're going to give it to these people. I want them trained. I want to make sure that they understand the importance of having this type of equipment. Because like Russ said, every time you implement new tactical equipment, you got to get them trained. You got to make sure that when you implement it, you minimize whatever liability. because that's the liability on the management side. And then, if you tend to use it and in a way that's not supposed to be used, it could turn into something criminal, because that's the heightened level of liability that's behind bringing something in like these. And mind you, these tools, because that's what they are, tools, are meant to help us de-escalate. So if you use them in a manner that's not meant to de-escalate, but rather abusive, that's the concern. And usually when we implement stuff like that, the public will see it as being abusive. We have to argue that it's not abusive. It is a tool to use to de-escalate. And once you're able to sell that bridge by, making sure it's implemented in a safe and secured fashion, the responsibility for frontline to use it the right way is literally at the highest level of responsibility. So granted, when you're given that weapon, it's not like, when you're given that tool, it's like, oh yeah, I got it. No, it's good that you have it. Don't get me wrong, but don't go gung ho with it, because now you're in charge of something that you could easily, if you misuse it in any way, be charged criminally. And watch, it's zero tolerance when you mess up that rule. If you use something in an effort to punish, or to retaliate, zero forgiveness on that. And also, when I started the profession, not now, but when I was there, years ago, it's changed now. Our main gate didn't even have, the officer didn't even have a weapon. We didn't have a weapon. If we had a concern, we called the rover. And the funny thing is, I will say this, even though we didn't, at the time, we didn't have any experience like to compare to, you knew not having a weapon at that post was vulnerable. Only reason why is you also got to call for backup immediately. What about the backup doesn't attend? Why am I not being armed? And that's something that was fixed relatively quick in my time in corrections. But I remember the main gate at certain facilities did not have an armed officer. But again, if you needed somebody, you would call the rover. But I think that's something I knew right off the bat. Hey, we got to get something here. And eventually, not because of my initiative, but eventually the department saw that, yeah, we got to make this more universal in its application. Because again, it's any area could be a threat, could be vulnerable. So whether you're in a female facility, male, whatever it is, you got to arm the people at those access points, especially more now than ever because of active shooters. And, it's not always about the threat coming out, but obviously now the threat that could possibly come in. Hey, Russ, you have anything you'd like to say in closing? I thought we did good. It was a good topic.
Yeah, that was a good topic. One of the things that I think I kind of, missed out on in my career is the advent of the body worn cameras, because I think, like, for me, being able to take footage like that and show people, what I was seeing out there and why I reacted to certain things and how I was able to be effective, I could have really taken that and made something out of it. And so, I hear people, oh, they're just going to, micromanage us with this. And I said, wait a minute, this can be a great training tool in order to be able to teach people, how to deal with inmates, what to look for. And, sometimes, people, they only want to see what the potential negatives are rather than the certain positives. And so, not everything has to be negative about moving forward, or about, the situation that corrections is in. People go out there and be your own best advocate, and get positions of leadership and drag corrections where it needs to be dragged to.
I like that, Russ. And then, guys, just my closing thought is that, times are changing. Obviously, I do believe we should be more involved, but I want to make sure that people understand that it is a gradual movement forward. I get it, but sometimes we look back and we think of times as more extreme than they really were. Like, I mean, we talk about old school corrections. Well, what do you actually mean by old school corrections? Because when you talk about it, a lot of people may think that you're talking about beating down inmates, and that may not be what you mean. You just may mean that you had a more hands-on approach. I mean, I think that's the concern we have right now in corrections due to policies and stuff like that. We have people that are less or more hesitant to do their job because things have been quick to put people on paper and be punitive because of the fear of liability. And I think that's something that we need to steer away from. But before we're able to do that, we need to let staff know that they're moving in the right direction. I remember recently one of my staff members who is very effective in what they do. He said, Gangi, when we're doing the searches, whatever it is there any way that someone from management can just come down and recognize what we're doing or appreciate what we're doing? And he goes, Gangi, not because I'm vain, not because I want it for the purpose of being recognized, but I just need to know we're going in the right direction. That's all. So when management comes down and shows support, that motivates us to keep moving in that direction. I think that's what corrections needs. I think corrections has been kind of on the outside for so long in regards to how we're seen that we very rarely ever get people from high-level management or high-level politics sitting next to us saying, no, I like what Russ is doing. I'm happy Russ is moving in that direction. And now Russ feels that, and Russ decides, hey, I got this guy's support. I'm going to keep doing me. But when all you get is the attacks and the negative, Russ, who's doing a very effective job, all of a sudden says, well, I don't know if I'm doing it right, because no one has ever come and told me that I'm doing it right. Now, not that Russ would ever need that before, but he unfortunately needs it now when the whole system's being attacked and, we don't have a full understanding of what's going on. The motivation truly does come when you're recognizing that individual for doing even the routine, because right now, that's another thing. We're afraid to do the routine, afraid to do what used to be common sense corrections. So I thought that was a good closing thought, a little caveat to our discussion. Russ, I know I added a new thought on that. You want to add anything before we sign off on that, or we're good? Or because I saw you.
I think we're good. And I just think that it just needs to be said is that trying to say old school and things were wrong back then. No, I don't think that that's the case. I just think that we were at a different part in our evolution. And I think that there's some things that we could bring back with regards to that, without necessarily, we don't have to regress, but we can have some of those techniques. There were a lot of great old school officers that I worked with that could really control things and control outcomes and control dangerous inmates just by the way they talked to them. Even some bona fide crazy inmates. And I think that some of that's gone and some of that's missing now, because everybody is waiting for their marching orders of what to do instead of taking the reins and saying, hey, here's what we're going to do, people. And you can do that even from the lowest levels as an officer out there. If you're competent in what you're doing, no one can tell you that that you shouldn't be out there leading things. I did it a lot. Once I got a certain level of training and experience behind me, then let's go, let's do it. Let's sort this thing out.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back. We're going to have that dialogue, assertive versus aggressive. I think that'll be our next dialogue. We'll get it up more sooner than later. I'll touch with Russ and we'll see when we can get it out there. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.